All right, so we are right at the hour. We'll go ahead and get started for today. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am LaSheryl Amirbe, Program Manager for Camber Outdoors. I'm excited to be here today for our fourth conversation. I can't believe I'm saying that, but yes, this is our fourth conversation, Recruit and Retain, which will highlight how to activate your organization's diverse talent pathways. Great to have you. For some of you, welcome back. And if this is your first conversation, welcome on in. So today will be an interactive webinar where Camber will share insights and industry leaders will join us today to discuss the importance of recruitment and retainment of diverse talent and the impact it can have on organizations' overall success. We will share challenges, tips, and advice as many of you move forward and toward making changes and progress in DEI within your workplaces and your personal lives. As you journey through your career in the outdoor industry, we will have some featured speakers that I can't wait for you all to hear from. They'll talk about recruiting and retention, best practices, as well as current trends and insights based on their expertise in the outdoor industry and beyond. Before we want to get started, we want to make sure that we do some housekeeping and kind of take care of some participation norms. Just kind of help, temperature for the room and make everything comfortable. The first thing we want to do is to make sure that everyone is honest, right? So be honest with yourself as you're doing some reflection. We'll do some live polling here at that time. And so you really want to take some time to be honest with yourself there. Be open-minded. You're going to hear some things that are going to, challenge your thought process. So just make sure you're open to those new concepts. Be clear, be kind and courteous as we talk about these differing opinions, and activate your growth mindset. Moving forward, we want to make sure that we are taking care of our agenda and everybody kind of has a flow for where we're headed today. We'll have a goal overview. We'll have a special message from our CEO, Tiffany Smith. We'll do a little bit of a poll to just kind of check the temperature of the room and see where recruit and retain is, as our reality. We'll have an HR guest panel. We'll have some Q&A. So this is a perfect time for you to use that Q&A toolbar there with your Zoom features. Great place to put those questions there so that you feel comfortable in getting those answered in a timely manner. Camber resources, reminders will be shared, and then we'll have closing remarks. So moving forward with the goal of today, we want to ensure that we provide you kind of the target for what we're looking for today. So that's to provide motivation and advice on how to activate your organization's diverse talent pathway. We're going to be talking about that pathway pretty intensely. And so we want to really hone in on those best practices and provide some knowledge there that you can take away and go ahead and move into your organizations with that. Without further ado, I want to take this time to allow our fearless leader and our CEO of Camber to share a special message. So Tiffany, you have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you so much, LaSheryl. And thank you to all of you that have joined us today to have this amazing conversation. On behalf of the board of directors at Camber and the Camber team, we are elated. We're elated that you all took time today as we share. And so, as CEO leading this amazing organization, I really stand here today with a sense of pride and purpose, really excited about this conversation in particular, because it aligns with a lot of things that are really close to my heart. And so when I think about, in general, just the great outdoors, for me, it's always been a place of solace, of inspiration. It's been a place where I can connect with nature, where I challenge myself. It's where I even find out, who I really am. That happened, during times in the outdoors. But also, right alongside of that is the outdoor industry also has been plagued with a lack of diverse talent, a lack of equitable systems, and inclusion overall. And it's beyond time for us to change that narrative. We must actively seek out, recruit, and retain diverse talent within our organizations. Why, you ask? Because diversity is not just a buzzword or a box to be checked. It is the key to really unlocking innovation, creativity, and success. When we bring together people from different backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, we create a melting pot of ideas and insights. We foster a culture of collaboration and open-mindedness, which leads to breakthroughs and growth. By embracing diversity, we ensure that our industry remains relevant, adaptable, and resilient. So how can we recruit diverse talent? How can we retain diverse talent in the outdoor industry? That is the question that we're all seeking the answer for. And I must say again that it starts with a commitment to change. We must acknowledge that there are barriers that have prevented underrepresented communities from fully participating, from fully engaging in workspaces. We must actively work to break down those barriers and create opportunities that are truly for everyone. So the first step to all of this is that we must create an inclusive and welcoming workplace culture. It's not enough to simply hire diverse talent. We must also ensure that they feel valued, respected, and supported. This means providing, like we do here, mentorship programs, professional development opportunities, and a safe space for open dialogue, kind of like the one you're in right now. We must foster an environment where everyone feels empowered to bring their whole selves to work. Second, we must expand our recruitment efforts, and you'll hear more about that today. We must cast a wider net, reaching out to communities that have traditionally been underrepresented in the outdoor industry. We can partner with other organizations that focus on that by creating pathways for talent to truly be able to enter into our industry. Camber Outdoors is at the epicenter of this change. We believe that we're serving as a beacon of guiding light to the outdoor recreation economy. And we've been able over the past few years, really see the transformative power of what happens when companies put diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront, at the core of who they really are. And two of the striking metrics that I'll kind of share before we kind of jump into the conversation today is this. In 2023, Camber partners make huge strides in hiring and retaining employees from underrepresented groups. Through our Camber survey system in 2020, we identified that our employers reported that 51% of all employees were male, which is now dropped down to 39% in 2023. That is huge, right? Not only that, in 2020, we tracked that our partners, they reported that 81% of their employees were Caucasian or white, and that has dropped down to 59% in 2023. And so as you see, our objective is not to just advocate for change, but to embody it and employ our partners and provide them with the resources and tools that they need to walk down this pathway of change that we are curating at Camber. So in conclusion, recruiting and retaining diverse talent in the outdoor industry is not just the right thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. It's an investment in our future, our industry, and the world that we live in. And so today, as you are listening to our leaders throughout the industry, I would advise you to take notes and ask a lot of questions, because whether we like it or not, the demographics of this country is changing. And as my friend earlier today, Dan said today, this train is already moving. So we are hoping that you are on the board of this train of change in the outdoor industry. So LaCheryl, because I could talk about this all day, let me stop there and I'll pass it back over to you, because I know we want to dive in deep with our guest panelists today. I can't wait to hear the stories and the tools and the tips that they're going to give us today. So I'll pass it back over to you.
Tiffany, thank you so much for that powerful message. It's much needed as we kind of dive into this conversation. And we are indeed in for a treat today. So kind of buckle up. What we're going to do now is we're going to give you an opportunity to really set the temperature for the room and do some self-reflection. Remember, we talked about our norms. We're going to be a little bit transparent today. This is an anonymous poll, but it will give you an opportunity to kind of check the temperature, as I said before, and kind of see where we are when it relates to diversity and inclusion. So we'll drop this Slido link into the chat. I see many of you are already on it. That's awesome. And we're going to answer the question that you see there. Have you or your organization actively worked to incorporate diversity, inclusion into your talent recruitment strategies within your organization? So I'll give you a couple of seconds to kind of feel that out and be as transparent as possible. Awesome. Okay. Great. So it looks like, for the most part, a lot of us are already, as Tiffany said, this train is rolling. You've jumped on board and you've made some of those initiatives happen. With some of you, you're kind of in the middle ground, and then some of us are like here trying to figure out the pieces to put those things together. So kind of let you know where we are in the room. Don't be shy about where you are. The process is going forward, and that's why we're here to help you. So thank you again for being transparent in that. We'll move forward with our guest today. Before we get into our guest, though, I want to share a few stats that will kind of help set the temperature again and give us some insight on the workplace, generally speaking, and then we'll move into a little bit more focus into what's happening in the outdoor industry. So first, what you see here is reference to workplaces. There's a shift in minority numbers, as Tiffany mentioned earlier before. As we creep towards 2045, you can see the shift happening, right? Gen Z will make up 48% of racial or ethnic minorities, right? So that's a huge number to really think about, is that Gen Z population starts to move into our organizations. Cash flow, right? Everybody likes to talk about money, and that's definitely not the driving force, but it's important for us to make some insight on that. So cash flow is higher per employee when there's diversity and inclusion within your organization. Again, as we focus in on the bottom line, diverse management can increase revenue by almost 20%. It is also important to highlight that gender diversity teams outperform those who are less gender diverse. So I know a lot of times when we think about diversity, we often move towards racial diversity, but it's also important to think about the full spectrum of diversity, including gender. And for those entering the job market, diversity remains the top priority. So this kind of gives you a general idea of the workplace. Now we'll move forward and kind of look at something that is a little bit more focused on the outdoor industry. Hot off the press from some of our 2023, Camber survey stats. These stats will help us see the shift happening in the outdoor industry. You can see an increase in organizations actively recruiting employees from underrepresented communities. Super important there. You can also see that our partners have been able to increase these numbers since 2020. So kudos for all of the work that's been done from our partners. We appreciate your hard work. Recruiting is improving, and we're looking towards diverse candidate pools at the senior level. So when we start to look at those C-suite positions, we're kind of breaking that up a little bit. That's awesome. Of course, it takes a lot of hard work to improve these numbers, and we are hopeful for the gains as the work continues. So thank you for all the hard work again. Now we're in for a treat. It's time for probably what all of you have been waiting for, and that's to hear from our professionals. So if you would, drop some fire emojis in the chat, because this is a hot topic. It's trending. Again, I want to remind us to be kind and courteous, be open, and really think about what we're talking about here as we move forward in society and kind of look forward to what the outdoor industry will look like. So first up, I want to introduce one of our guests, and that is going to be Mr. Dan Kwong. Dan grew up in Lake Tahoe, California. He's passionate about helping people find their path using sports and outdoors as inspiration. He's an adjunct faculty member at University of Denver, Daniels College of Business. Dan is also the VP of Talent and Culture for Woodward, an experiential ski and action sports company based in Park City, Utah. He oversees full cycle human resources and organizational development for their 3,000 person team members across the US. When he's not on the skis or bike, you can find him seeking diverse life experiences all around the world. If you would, throw some W's in the chat for our good friend, Dan. Dan, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. If you would join us here on the screen, let's get started with this conversation. How you feeling today, Dan?
Feeling pretty good. Yeah, thank you
Awesome.
for the great warm welcome and creative intro. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and maybe even good evening, depending on where you are. Excited to be here and chat and also learn from everyone, and Camille, who's speaking after me. So you're right, we're in a really cool space in our D&I journey. And just to be transparent, we're just starting. I'm sure many of you are feeling that way. We are just starting. However, there's been so much good energy, lots of great conversations happening across Woodward and Powder, our parent company. But here's why I'm hopeful. I see and hear curiosity and openness and lots of positive energy. And what our team is trying to do is channel that in together to create change, to really connect with what Tiffany was talking about. So some context, if you haven't heard about Woodward, I hope you will soon, or come see us. We are a global action sports experience company. So what that means is skiing, snowboarding, skateboarding, BMX, mountain biking, scooter, parkour, and more sports to come. We'll keep a little bit of a secret there. So I hope you can join us. We call ourselves a 50-year-old startup. And I don't know if any of you are in that space. Very interesting. We are high growth, super busy. We do not like to sit on our laurels. But what we get back to is something super important: our culture and our talent. Doesn't matter how big you are as a company. I think for us, our brand and our culture is special, and our talent, like many of you, we need our talent, and our talent makes us Woodward, makes us an action sports company. So when we think about culture, lots of different ways to approach it, but what we're trying to do is create an inclusive culture, connected culture, and a community focused culture. And when I say community, I mean part of this larger ecosystem that is Woodward, but also localized. We hope that Woodward can be individualized and localized in each of our employees' hearts and souls, but also in those different communities, whether it's in the mountains or in the water and beach or in the city with our concrete skate parks. It should be able to exist in all shapes and forms. When we talk about diversity within Woodward, it's also how we look at action sports. So a couple of things. Like I said, we just started. So a year ago, we had a lot of ambitious dreams that we're trying to bring alive through structure, investment, and expansion. Into Woodward Sydney will be our first international location. But we also need to ground ourselves in what is most important. And for us in the DE&I space, we are starting with empowering women in action sports. And like Tiffany said, there's a lot of barriers potentially in the outdoor industry and different versions of barriers. It's no different within action sports. It can be intimidating and scary, clicky. It's connected and clicky, so it's an interesting tension there. So we are trying to help women and girls feel comfortable and confident in a judgment-free zone, right? And so the couple of things we started to do: one, we established a women's advisory council. This council itself is also diverse. We are so lucky to have Jamie Anderson. If you follow, Jamie is a two-time gold medalist and so much more in snowboarding. Lizzie Armanto is a pro athlete who has joined us on the skateboarding side. But we also included employees who are our most passionate, amazing people. So Emily Brooks from Woodward, Pennsylvania, she was promoted, super proud of her, into a new role as our women's action sports manager. So you got to have the right people in the advisory council and the right guiding team to do some of this work. Number two is programming. So how are we developing women-centric programming? That means working with our visiting pro athletes to create an inclusive and supportive environment for women, trans, and non-binary individuals. We work with teams like Bloom BMX and Poseidon Foundation, creating women's Warride nights, like signature events like Jamie's Jam, which was brand new. So having an environment, an event, an opportunity to bring different people together, that's part of the deal. So programming is super important and core to Woodward. Let's talk about talent acquisition and talent development. Talking about people, we again are just getting started, and so in order to attract more women and people of color and BIPOC folks into our space, we need to have staff, right? We want to be able to see yourself at Woodward and in action sports. And so we have a ways to go, and we have taken a great organic approach. And Aaron Krause, I'm going to embarrass him, he's on the call. He leads talent strategy. That's talent acquisition and talent development for all the Woodwards. And so where we are, transparently, we are at 22% of our leadership roles are women-led. So not a high number, but it's a starting place. Our goal is 50%. So we've got some great opportunity ahead of us. In terms of our mix for employees across our Woodward platform, 27% of our staff identify as women, and 22% identify as BIPOC. So those are the numbers. It's hard to measure data sometimes. And to be honest, it's very manual currently in our system. But here's the point. You got to measure and start somewhere, even if that means spreadsheets and pieces of paper. Yes, I know it's 2024 almost. And then the final piece is partnership. And so we can't do it all in a silo at Woodward or in our community. So we heavily rely on talented folks and groups who are experts, because we are not the experts at Woodward, but we like to find a lot of great people to advise us. So Camber, of course, Stoked, if you've heard of Stoked, they are a wonderful mentoring organization that uses action sports culture to close the opportunity gap. Skate Like a Girl, huge fan. We're bringing them on board to work with our executive team in December. They work on focusing on creating an inclusive community by promoting confidence, leadership, and social justice through skateboarding. Where we've leveraged them is through education. Right? What does it mean? How do pronouns work? Like, I think basics are important, including having partners who can create a safe space for even fancy executives to a degree to even talk about these topics, or just trying to get people to talk. And so, I'll wrap up at least this section is I think it is important that we make action sports and the outdoors more approachable, more welcoming for more folks. But it's about the long game for us. It's always about get the foundation in place. Let's do it in the right way, so it's not just lip service or words on a page or a fancy poster. We truly believe, right, beliefs are important here. We believe that action sports has incredible potential to help all of our communities feel more inclusive, and then also to connect different people to their purpose and their passion. So we're really excited to do more in this space and know that it's not just about building new programs and initiatives. We believe it's about creating safe spaces so others can share perspectives like we're doing today. So thank you for your engagement here. And also so we can collectively spend more time listening, more time acknowledging, and then of course, more time learning.
Outstanding, Dan, man. I really appreciate your transparency and just kind of letting us into the way of Woodward, like really getting us an insight on some of the awesome programming that you have and some of the initiatives that you're pushing. I heard you kind of speak about, the next generation coming up and kind of preparing some of the young ladies and some of the different things that we have as far as the Stoke program. That's really awesome. We here at Camber have an internship program that we use to kind of push the diverse talent pipeline. And we're really looking at that next generation and working with our partners to kind of, push them into the outdoor industry. And so if you could expand a little bit on the new learnings and insight from the recent class you taught there, talent management at the University of Denver.
Yeah, for sure. And just so everyone's clear, that class is not just for HR. And so it was actually there's one person who actually worked in HR, and the other folks were folks from Aspen, and folks from the city of Denver. So it was also a diverse, eclectic group for the outdoor industry. Absolutely. So just like I said, we are trying to diversify participation with our customer base. We're trying to do the same with our staff, and it's not easy. It takes time, some investment in the long game. So quickly around this course, talent management and DE&I in the outdoor industry is the name. A little bit long. We'll work on that. It's part of a larger program called the Leadership in the Outdoor Industry, the LORI program. It's run through University of Denver. And if anyone's from VF Corp here, thank you so much. VF Corp based in Denver are sponsors. And so the point is this. We know that the outdoor industry is growing. We know that there is more demand for more focused, specialized workforce development, certainly professional education to meet the needs of our industry, right? We're trying to help ourselves, help others. And so the program helps to create specialized, easy to access programming. So online, right? That will prepare folks for current jobs. If any of you are like myself, we're always hiring, which is a good sign for business, but also future careers because the outdoor industry continues to grow. So we got to prepare. So the overarching quote I used in that class was this, and hang on, there's a lot of rhythm here. Having the right talent isn't enough. Having the right talent in the right place at the right time with the right skills, and oh, by the way, the right engagement is what it takes. So it's almost like this crazy formula that continues to move, right? So that is what we're trying to do. And the material we went over for the course, 3 buckets. Bucket number 1 was foundations. So things like competencies, which means just behaviors, like what are we looking for success? What does it mean to be successful as a person at Woodward or your company? Competencies. Performance management. It is not about a scary year-end review, although that's still part of the stigma in some organizations, including ours. But how do we get the best out of people? Everyone's different. So how we manage performance should not be the same approach all the time, at least in my eyes. And then engagement and retention. Bucket number 2, how do we assess and develop talent? It doesn't need to be prescriptive or cold, right? We are human beings. There's so many factors. So it's not necessarily one set formula. So how are we looking at things like succession planning? Right? When we, say if you're growing like we are, who are we preparing for these new businesses and these leadership roles? Or as we get turnover, making sure we have business continuity. And then ultimately, it's about creating talent pipelines. Talent can come from anywhere, actually. So this is when I think about diverse talent pipelines, like, are we looking at differently, or are we looking at different places in where we source and building relationships like with the University of Denver, Camber, and many others to bring in talent that may be non-traditional for some of our industry. And then finally, talent strategy. How are we connecting the talent strategy with the business strategy? Things should ladder up and connect, right? If we're going to leverage and maximize our resources, our mindsets, our strategies, we got to connect the dots, and then also connect the dots for others. So one way we're connecting the dots at Woodward is really in around how we engage talent through one of the most critical pieces, I think, is the employee experience. So folks on my team, I'm very, very lucky to have an awesome team and great support from across Powder and our company, is, designing authentic connections throughout the entire employee experience for all levels of employees or staff members. And that is around creating these connections. So when I think about connecting with talent, so this applies to diverse talent too, how are we connecting different people with your brand? How are we connecting different folks with our culture or subcultures, right? How are we talking about what we're doing and who we are? Identity is a huge thing. And so, if you are not able to position and talk about the identity of your company in a way that relates to different folks, then it's unlikely you will connect with folks, even if you're trying to market it in certain channels. Which also goes back to Simon Sinek, right? The why. One of the coolest potential ways to connect with diverse talent is how you talk about your company's why. So your company's purpose, your mission, your vision. Right. For us, we're an action sports company that believes that everyone can progress and grow and learn. Doesn't matter your age, your gender, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, all the things. And so how do we talk about that why with other folks who maybe have never been on a skateboard? By the way, I do not skate. I may look like I don't. And so I still connect to the company culture, growing up the way I grew up. And then finally, connecting with people, right? Being able to have brand champions or ambassadors for your company, for your brand, where everyone can be an advocate, right? The more people you have out there outside of your website, right? Like, those are your champions. Those are the representations of your brand. So, that is what we're doing. We're looking through how do we create connections, but also, leveraging the employee experience as a way to bring people in. So here's an example. And yes, the HR guy is going to talk about feelings, which is not unusual for maybe some of you in the room. Connections are about, like, how do you bring certain feelings within the employee experience? So we talk about the word inclusion. Inclusion can be seen as a feeling, right? So, 6 months ago, I think this was May, we had an offsite, lots of people, and we talked about what do we want people to feel throughout, the different chapters of our employee journey. The words that came up were inclusive, connected, safe, supported, fun. Thank goodness that came up. Uplifting, empowered, welcoming, valued, stoked, purposeful, seen, and heard. So we use these feelings in how we design experiences and ultimately their programs, right? Their HR programs. And so in doing so, we can help create faster and deeper connections between talent and the team and the community. Because even if you attract diverse talent, they may not stay. They may, unfortunately, because the vibe's not right, using Woodward speak. And in doing so, we also decrease the time it takes for talent to find their rhythm, to find their momentum, and to contribute, right? To have impact, which can be connected to people's whys. All right, so I'll wrap it up with a couple words and thoughts that's going through my head still to this day, right? We believe that, it's not the same one-size-fits-all approach. To attract diverse talent, you got to have diverse approaches. So we build in flexibility in our approaches to any of these programs at Woodward. Everything from how we deliver talent management programs, how do we customize orientation as an experience at different businesses and across the United States. And so at the end of the day, how we engage people to bring them in matters. It does. The details matter and the intent matters, and the thoughtfulness matters. So, I would say, acknowledge that engagement looks and feels different to different people. And so when we take on this mindset, that is how we care for all of our talent and their different needs. And to diversify our talent pool, I do think, at least for us, we got to start with the talent we have. We got to start inside. And so how can we all create a place that is awesome for everyone? And that is one of the things we're working on, the foundation, and how we took those talent management principles and applied it at least this early stage in our journey.
Dan, I hope that they had their pens and notepads out. You dropped some major gems. Thank you so much for the transparency. One thing that stuck out to me is that you talked about being able to find diverse talent anywhere and everywhere. And so that message really stuck out for me. I hope the audience was able to catch some awesome gems. And just thank you again for your transparency. You're doing an awesome job over there, Wilbur. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Wow. Powerful conversation, y'all. We're not done. We still have another phenomenal guest. So again, get your notepad, get ready. We have another guest up for you. Next up, we have Camille Tate. And so I'll give you a little bit of information about her before she takes onto the screen. So Camille, let's see here. Camille graduated at the University of Tennessee. She's currently resides in Dallas, Texas with her husband of 13 years and 5-year-old son. After starting her career in technology staffing with globally recognized firms, she went on to spend a long-standing tenure with reputable brands such as Redbox, Matchbox.com, the Beck Group, and now Strava. Head of talent at Strava is a title. She's done 18 years. So 18 years of information we're about to get here. That's a treat, y'all. That's a treat with talent acquisition. So that's amazing. Co-founder and owner of the Career Salon LLC and co-host of Career Salon podcast with HR Twins. So without further ado, let's invite Camille to the screen. Camille, wow, long Rolodex. They're a beautiful, beautiful experience that you have there. So we're really excited to hear from you. How you feeling today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for the last couple of weeks. So excited to be here.
Awesome, y'all. If y'all would drop some hearts into the chat for Camille as we kind of get started with our conversation. Thanks again for being here. So Camille, we had a chance to kind of connect and talk a little bit offline. And of course, we've talked about so many things that are kind of happening in society and kind of how those things can kind of impact the HR space, recruitment and retainment. So if you would kind of expand on some of those trends and changes and how it can impact HR directly.
Okay, so many things that have been happening specifically over the last 3 years. We just are still coming out of a global pandemic, which is big, right? And inside that global pandemic, we also had a lot of social change, a lot of remote work. All of those things really have changed the market in general, totally. Some for the better and some, for like revealing things that have all along been happening and people it's just coming to the surface. And so I think all of these things, specifically around remote work and the pandemic, I think that the positive was companies, if you are saying that you are interested in hiring and recruiting people from underrepresented groups, perfect. If you weren't, employing people remotely before in a distributed way, it's a perfect opportunity for you to get the person that went to UAPB in Arkansas and pull them into your organization. You would have never known who they were. You would have never had their skill set if you weren't allowed the opportunity or the opportunity or the realization that, hey, we can get more candidates, from underrepresented backgrounds in our organization. So that's one thing. The flip side is that is affecting like how companies handle that and, managing a distributed team. I think a lot of companies are still grappling like, okay, how do we handle coming back to work? Are we, going 100% remote? Are we doing hybrid? Are we making everyone come back into to the office? I think a lot of companies are still dealing with that. I mean, you have to count the costs, right? Some companies spend millions of dollars on real estate. And of course, the natural thing to do would be to bring everyone back to the office. But I do think that if people want to recruit and have a pipeline from underrepresented groups, you have to make an investment. And sometimes that is making an investment in or making a sacrifice and saying, hey, we realize these benefits during, remote work. And so we're going to keep going with that and then make adjustments elsewhere. So that's one of the things that I think companies are still struggling with. And then just the social change of it all. When you are from an underrepresented group and things affect you like George Floyd and other things that have happened, well beyond these years, that's something that I think people are digging into companies' backgrounds, and if their Black square that they put up on social media still matters. And are they putting their action where their words were 3 years ago? I think that's a big to do. I think some companies are like, okay, we have to adjust our business. That's no longer really a priority, but it's making sure companies keep their foot on the gas. And it is a priority. We know with data points that having representation in your organization directly correlates to improving the bottom line. And so is it that, or you just your head is elsewhere and you're focused on other things? But if you are truly focused on making sure that you recruit from underrepresented groups, is making sure that, those actions follow the words, and it's making an investment, it's making a sacrifice. I know that, and sometimes that can be hard for companies to do, but it's necessary, because long are gone the times where candidates do not speak up and they are not asking the hard questions, and candidates do. I am a witness and my team is a witness. Candidates ask the hard questions. Specifically, they want to know, are they going to come into an organization where people look like them? Are they going to come into an organization where DEI, anti-racism even, is a priority for that organization? What are the benefits? What is the culture like? All of those things, questions that candidates didn't ask before, were afraid to ask. Different companies and organizations, they are asking now, because they no longer fear not getting a job or settling. They want to be in a space where they feel psychologically safe, where they are cared for, where the company, shows that they matter, and that they are set up for success. So that's a big thing. And then we also have this transition, this generational shift we got Zennials in the workplace who are managers now. You got Generation X. You got all these different generations kind of melding together, and you're in a distributed work environment. So lots of things have changed just in a matter of the last 3 or 4 years. And I think it's incumbent upon organizations to find what works for them in terms of trends, as far as recruitment and things like that. I think everybody wants to hop on all the bandwagons, but you need to make sure that you have the basics first. It's lovely to get tools and AI and all of these things to assist with whatever you might have from a people standpoint. But if you don't have the basics, then I don't think that's ever going to be long range successful in terms of like recruitment. You want to add AI, but your whole TA team looks alike. No one comes from a different background. They all think the same, but you really want to champion DEI. You really want to recruit, that diverse pipeline of talent, but your team looks alike, right? Everybody looks the same. They come from the same background. They probably worked together, years previous at different companies. And that is not correlating, right? You have to make sure that you have a diverse talent team, firstly, as well as your hiring teams. I think that people, sometimes recruitment happens in a vacuum, and the realization that recruitment itself, and we're in the outdoor industry, right? We're in the sports industry. Recruitment is a team sport. It really is. The onus is not on the talent team. The onus to recruit and retain talent from underrepresented groups, it's all of us. It's a collective effort. And I feel like we have to challenge our hiring managers, our leadership, to step outside of your comfort zone. And I always say anti-racism, DEI, it starts before you even get into your workplace. It starts at home. if you don't ever meet or talk or hang out with people that don't look like you, that don't come from the same background on the weekends, or when you're going on a trip, or just, for coffee, tea, how do you come into work and expect to recruit and retain individuals that are from totally different backgrounds than you are? It's not authentic and it's not genuine. So what we do here at Strava, or what I try to do since I've been here, is challenge the status quo. You want to recruit, have a diverse talent pool. We want to strive to build an anti-racism or anti-racist organization, but you don't do that outside of work. So I challenge people wherever I go to make sure the basics are down. And so if the basics are you make one or two friends or one or two colleagues in your specific space that don't look like you, that you didn't go to college with, so on and so forth, then that's what you need to do. And that is what is making an investment and putting the money where your mouth is. It's doing something outside of the norm. And that may seem like low-hanging fruit, but there's so many organizations that want this goal of recruiting and retention of, high performers, as well as, people from underrepresented groups, but they don't want to do the work until it comes to their 9 to 5, which I feel like is a fail. So there are so many trends and things like that, and we can talk about that all day. Specifically, the AI buzzword is getting thrown around, and I'm like, hey, like, you have a recruiting team and you have a sourcing team that is different. So you have a regular recruiting team and then you have a diversity sourcing team. It's all the same. And my team knows me. We're not separating this. If you are recruiting, you're recruiting for everyone. And our focus is to bring people into the funnel that can bring a point and power of diversity into our organization. So it doesn't need to be separate. So I see that's a trend that everybody is hopping on, and it doesn't need to be separate, because recruiting is recruiting. It's relationship building. And recruiting is also, it yields retention. People's experiences with hiring managers and teams, and even my team or like the talent team, it all leads into that person's experience at the company. And it's a key indicator of if they will stay for a certain amount of time or if they're going to leave.
Wow. I hope that was received. That was
I can go on and on. I talk about this all day, and it's so important for people not to jump on bandwagons just because the rest of the industry is, I don't know if the demographics of this webinar, but I remember, the color purple, when Miss Seeley say, I got Miss Seeley folks pants, one size fit all. But that is not true in recruiting. That is not true. You have to build the processes, the frameworks, the tools that work for your company. At Strava, we are one of the largest sports communities in the world, the center of connected fitness, over 100 million athletes on our platform in 195 countries, right? And we know what that looks like. When we think about athletes in the outdoors, it's predominantly white. And so how do we build a community internally where we get to change or impact that number or that demographic on our platform? It starts with how we build our teams. And so that's super important. And you have to curate your own processes, your own investments, how you do things according to your culture, your company, and everything that's out there may not be for you.
Really like that. I love the way you zoomed in on authenticity and being that way outside of your 9 to 5. It's hard to reflect what you're seeking if that's not happening. So I love that intentionality, and then action lastly is kind of what sums up what you said perfectly. Just making sure that you're moving as a team and including all those trends, but just being authentic and being real. I think we got a lot of kudos in the chat for that as well. So appreciate you. I really appreciate you kind of commenting on AI as well. I know that's kind of a buzzword that is kind of worrying people, but you just kind of blend with it as you said there too. I appreciate that. This is one final question for you, Kumi, as we kind of look towards the end of a busy year, and what makes you optimistic about the future of work for the outdoor industry?
What makes me optimistic, like off the top of my head, is that the outdoor industry will always be here. And I love that, because you'll always have people connected to the outdoors, whether they're walking, whether they're running, whether they're riding their bikes or whatever, swimming, hiking, it'll always be there. I'm excited about the opportunities for companies within the outdoor space to really affect change. The outdoor industry has been one note for a long time. And I think that it's important for us to bring in more voices into the room, whether it be like our business or even internally within the different company organizations, teams. It's important that we focus on diversifying the voices within our industry, within our organizations. I'm excited about that. I think that what we did in the past is not going to work for where we're going in the future, 2024 and beyond. We're going to have to do something different, right? That doesn't mean forget the basics, because we need that, but it also means building something for now and for the future and whatever that might look like. But I know what it should look like is a sea of people that all are different, that have different capabilities, contributing to our community in the outdoor space. So that's what I'm excited about when I think about leading my team and HR and recruiting here at Strava. I think that's what we're striving for. And we just got to keep our foot on the gas. Like, consistency is key and making sure that you're flexible and you have some agility to adjust with whatever's going on. And like I said, you're building for your company and not just trying to flow along with other organizations or trends. You do what's best for you.
Really like that. Just kind of like you said, building for the future. That's something that stuck out with what you just explained there. So I really appreciate you. I'm gonna stop taking all your time and give our attendees an opportunity to answer some questions as well. So I'll invite Dan back onto the screen. Tiffany, I'll invite you back onto the screen. And now that y'all, this is a perfect opportunity to pick the brains of some brilliance right here, some experience that's in the room. So if you have some questions, please drop those questions into our Q&A section there, and we'll be happy to get those answered. I do have a couple of leading questions though, just in case we don't have any. Let's check it out. How we looking here? Okay, I'll give y'all some time, give you some time. So one of the questions I want to go back to you, Dan. One of the questions that we talked a little bit prior to the webinar about what is and kind of the implementation of DEI. I'm sure some of the leaders are in similar places, right? So you talked about you all kind of being the 50-year startup, and I appreciate your transparency about that, because I think a lot of people are kind of nervous about walking into this and saying, hey, we haven't started anything. How do we move forward? So if you could kind of expand on kind of, the transparency about where you are, where you're headed, and how you continue to build culture. I know one of the things you talked about, I caught you cooking lunch for your team. And so the culture piece and kind of moving forward with Wilbert in that respect.
Yeah, so if I can share my 20-page strategy slide. No, just kidding. Strategic decks are important, like I said before, in talent strategy. And I want to say this just as a person trying to make things better. I love food. I don't know about y'all, but I love food. Doesn't matter the weather, all sorts of food. We talk a lot about learning about the world through food and different people. So when you caught me on that Zoom call, I try to take care of others. And that might be, if I don't have time, ordering lunch. I just DoorDashed Cafe Zupas to the corporate office in Park City, because I'm not there right now, or frying up some turkeys for Thanksgiving. But I think the point is, it's not just about the cooking of the food. It is being with people. So I remember, some of the toughest leaders I've worked with, usually men, right in the mountains, just 40, 50-year-old legacy, amazing, highly talented, making them cook dinner with each other. That breaks down barriers, age, color your skin, gender. And so I try to do that, whether it's, a frontline employee who's struggling because we reorged his team, or if they're angry at me because I fired his boss, which unfortunately has happened, just cook with them, because eventually they'll have to say something. So those are some of the small things. I think zooming outside of the food piece is, I don't know about some of you, but time tends to be precious. And I feel the pressure of trying to really make things better in a shorter amount of time. Sometimes I need to be patient. But as your teams grow and your organization grows and maybe you're spread out everywhere, I try to, the best I can, when I travel to the different Woodward locations, prioritize time just to talk to people. It seems so simple. And yes, there's skip level meetings and tactics and all that. But I'm like, no, just show up. No agenda. We have a beautiful campus in Pennsylvania, in the middle of nowhere, but it's beautiful. And you just like walk with them or ride the chairlift with them or work in the kitchen with them, trying to just talk and share life stories with each other. I think that's helpful. That can be really vulnerable for folks. And so, all to say, it takes time, it takes action, it takes intentionality, which I think Camille was talking about too with your approach. But just try one conversation at a time. It doesn't just have to be about work, it's human to human. And you're bound to find something to connect with. That for me is the micro lens on culture that will lead to these bigger, important strategic D&I initiatives. But if we're not talking to our people, if we're not cooking with them, and truly, it's cheesy, but I believe in it. If we're not sharing a meal, what are we doing?
Really like that. I really like how you just tapping into the humanity of people, just meet people where they are. That's so important. I think we tend to move away from that, but I love how you just stripped it down and just, even take a walk with somebody. Outstanding. Then really.
I love that too, LaShera. It makes me
Yeah.
kind of think about just, I was in a conversation maybe a month or so ago, and it was different leaders in the industry asking me questions around recruitment and how to retain and all those different pieces. And I love the fact that we've started this conversation with the main ingredient, which is the culture. I love the fact that we started there, because no matter what size you are, the culture is the key ingredient to recruitment and retention. And I know Camille's going to dive in and probably give us some more layers to it, but I had to just kind of jump in there and say that before you can even begin your 20-point strategy around recruitment, you have to look at the culture of your organization first. And so I know Camille is going to jump in, but I had to just kind of say that piece there is that, like I told them in that meeting, there's no jump in the line. You have to do the pre-work before you can get to the amazing talent. You can't jump the line. There isn't a quick fix. You have to do this work. And so, Camille, could you share some more light on that for us too, as well, with that question?
Yes, and I would echo everything you said, Tiffany. You, Dan, you're amazing. Thanks for your opinion and the conversation. It's so important, that culture piece. And I don't think that a lot of people say culture fit. What does that even mean, right? Because each one of us contribute to the culture.
Yes.
So how can somebody fit in if they're coming to be a value add? So that's what I wanted to say on the culture piece. But in terms of like recruitment and retention and like HR, I've been doing this for 18 years. One of the pieces I see where people fall down is they don't realize that it's people over process. And I know people that are like very into data, analytics, rules, frameworks, and they are just like concentrating on that. When it comes to retention of people from underrepresented groups specifically that we're talking about, you need to know that the people are much more valuable than the process. If you invest in the people, if you know how to manage and lead the people, the process will happen, right? We try to think that people's lived experiences and their backgrounds and what they're experiencing personally don't come into the workplace. And we need to stop being in denial, right? Where I see people fall down is they think about process over people versus people over process. And then also, like I said, when it comes to recruitment, everybody kind of stays in their own vacuum, their own silo. It doesn't matter because this is what they do, DEI 9 to 5. How can you manage someone and you don't try to understand their lived experience? You don't connect with their background or anything or any of their perspective other than work. Like that is a big deal when it comes to culture, when it comes to retention, when it comes to recruitment. It's all a cycle and it all works together. So when you speak about culture, the major contribution to culture and it being a positive one is for people managers specifically to understand that managing the person will yield the results that you're looking for on a longer term basis than just not getting to know them. I will tell you, like when I do one-on-ones with my team, sometimes we hardly ever talk about work, because they may be going through something may be impacting them on the day or the week that is going to affect their work. So what I want to do is make sure they feel safe and that they are able to speak to me about whatever it is, right? Giving them the floor to make sure we're able to move forward successfully in whatever things that we have to do for the week or to achieve our goals. So I think people need to understand that the trend line of making sure that it's people over processes, and that's what makes the culture, is super important. And you have to, especially if you want to build and retain a diverse team, it's key. It's key. You can't do it. You can't do it without that.
Really appreciate that sentiment. Again, just focusing in on the people and making sure that that's a priority, people in process. Yeah, really appreciate those sentiments. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. I want to make sure that I attend to those. I see one in here. This is a pretty good question. Hopefully I nail it and I kind of get the perspective that they're seeking. It says, oftentimes we think about diversity in terms of what is visible. So I'm thinking about race and things of that nature. How can we attend to the invisible dimensions of diversity in recruitment and retention? For example, we're talking about sexuality, religion, some of those things that we rarely touch on, but I think is also highly important. So I don't know who wants to take this. We probably go Dan or Camille. Dan, we'll shoot it over to you, and then we'll wrap back around.
Yeah, that's a great question. Kirby, who may or may not be from Powder. Definitely, Camille may have some great insights to back me up here or to support. If I think about, maybe we can talk about recruiting. Although Camille gave some great insights there. I think when we think about the invisible dimensions in recruiting, right, it is truly about. I'm going to jump back to cultural fit. That can be such a funky opportunity for bias when we say cultural fit. Woodward, so you say action sports company. What should an action sports company employee look like? We have probably visuals of that, all of us right now. It probably doesn't look like me, to be fair. But that's the point, right? So when I think about the word cultural fit, what are we looking for in terms of connections? That also goes to identity. So identity can encompass some of the invisible dimensions as well. So as long as we are creating an experience, an interview process, how we post a job, what questions are we asking that bring out the most authentic self in the candidate, then hopefully that person will feel comfortable to talk about anything, even if it's an invisible dimension, right? So it's not like a step 1, step 2, step 3. I'm not sure if I can, unfortunately, deliver that to y'all today, but I think if we create a comfortable, a safe space within an interview process, or we position the brand or the culture through recruitment marketing as a place you can be yourself, then I think individuals are more likely to be honest about who they are and not be fearful about saying XYZ or for someone discovering XYZ. So I'm not sure that fully got it, Kirby, and happy to chat when we have lunch together. But Camille, shoot it back to you for any wise words.
I mean, I think regarding this question, it's more like neurodivergency and things like that, and people from deaf community and things like that, making sure that the opportunity is there to have an equitable and fair process or shot at an opportunity with your organization. It's making sure that things are out there to show they are welcome, right? They are welcome. So we make sure that in our communication to candidates on the application, when we are communicating with them through scheduling tools and things like that, if you need an accommodation, please, definitely reach out to us, making sure that, they know that we're a welcoming environment for people from all walks of life, right? And disability, anything that we can assist with, we like to make sure people know that we're there. So making sure that, like Dan said, in your recruitment marketing and the messages you put out there. I mean, I'm not the greatest public speaker. I wrote an article about that on LinkedIn, and so many candidates like responded to it like, oh my gosh, like, and just having people represent you to show like, hey, I have these things, whatever that may be. And people may not know that about me, but sharing that. And I heard from so many different candidates like, wow, if you say this, then I definitely have a shot at, having a conversation with Strava and things like that, or, making sure our teams are sharing their stories is important as well.
Man, I really appreciate that. Very good sentiments. Like you said, we all have our weaknesses, vulnerabilities. It's important to share those and just kind of come to the pass with that. So that's very important. Thank you for sharing that. I got a challenge for you in maybe 30 seconds, Camille. 30 seconds for Dan, probably Camille here. We have a question in the chat that really talks about leadership buy-in and how a lot of times leaders are shouldering that responsibility. Like, what if the leader is not necessarily tapped in? How can the employees kind of tap in and come together to make that more of an organizational change instead of it being shouldered by one person? Maybe in 20 to 30 seconds from there.
I think when it comes to like leadership in terms of the C-suite, and, it's unfortunate that some C-suite leaders are not, all in as far as DEI, but I think it's important, if they need data, show them the data. Right. I think that's where data comes into play, is making sure you show these C-suite leaders, and also that you're sharing stories with them and you're showing the impact, the positive impact of building a diverse team. So I really think that that's just one. I have a plethora, but I'll swing it over to Dan. He might have something more to contribute, but I'd say with the C-suite, you want to include data in there.
I'll try to do 15 seconds. Start the clock. So data is important. I go back to when I said aligning talent strategy to business strategy. At least for some of us in the room, like, we are HR leaders, but we are HR business people. And so you got to know the business, understand like what's most important to different teams, including the C-suite, and then connect initiatives straight back, like laddered up. This, X engineer, X input, yield a Y output, right? If we do this, it will result in this and benefit the company in the ways that we've talked about prioritizing.
Wow, I appreciate that. Y'all nailed that in a couple of seconds. Y'all, we are at the hour. I appreciate everybody kind of staying on and giving us an opportunity to let our guests to kind of express and answer these questions. I know we have a few more questions in the chat, and we had a couple of people with raised hands, things like that. If you want to stick around, we can do that. For those of you who need to drop off, we can also do that. But I want to kick it over first to our CEO for any last words before we depart today.
Tiffany, you're on mute.
Got you. We got you too.
Oh my goodness. I was like, amazing. Like, I am just elated for this conversation today. We will definitely answer all of the questions for sure via email. So let us know if we have missed you, but I did see 2 that we will be responding to, but we're always open, always available to be a thought partner with you as you're charting the course for what's next for your organization in reference to creating that culture of belonging, where you're able to not only just recruit diverse talent, but to retain diverse talent. And so until we meet again, we do have some resources for you that LaShera will kind of talk about very, very briefly. And we are just extremely grateful for this conversation. So many nuggets, so much to glean from, and let us know if we can support you in any way in the future. So until then, we will see you soon. I'm loading off, and I think LaShera's hopping back on and give us some final announcements.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know we kind of ran out of time. If you kind of check the chat, we have a few resources in there. We have information about our Save the Date, next conversations that are coming up. So again, look for that recap email. We'll send out a lot of this information again for you. I think they also, our amazing team dropped our email address in there. So if you have that question, info@Camber Outdoors, go ahead and drop that question there, and we'll be sure to get you taken care of. So again, thank you so much for amazing conversation. Put some hearts in the chat as you log off. In respect for our guests and all the amazing transparency that they share. So again, thank you so much, and we'll see you for the next conversation.